Indian billionaire invites his maid to a company party to humiliate her. But when she enters the party, everyone is left shocked. Welcome to Billionaires and Hearts. Before we dive into today's emotional journey, don't forget to subscribe and click the bell to stay updated. We'd love to hear your first impressions, so drop a comment below and let us know what you think as you watch. And if you enjoy our stories, please like and share this video with your friends. Now let's get started. Maya wiped the sweat from her brow as she polished the marble floors of the grand Mehta mansion. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the immaculate interior. As a maid in one of Mumbai's wealthiest households, she had grown accustomed to the opulence that surrounded her, even if it felt worlds away from her own modest existence. Harsh Mehta, the owner of the mansion and CEO of Mehta International, strode through the foyer, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the freshly polished floor. He barely acknowledged Maya's presence. She was just another servant in his vast empire. But today something was different. He stopped, turned, and fixed his cold gaze upon her. "You, come to my office," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed without question. Maya followed him through the winding corridors, her heart pounding. In all her years of service, she had never been summoned to his office. The room was a testament to his success. Ancient artifacts displayed alongside modern art, Persian rugs covering Brazilian hardwood floors. "There's a company gala this weekend," Harsh announced, settling into his leather chair. "I want you to attend." Maya's eyes widened in surprise. "Sir." "As a guest," he continued, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Wear something appropriate. I'll have my assistant send you the details." Confused but unable to refuse, Maya nodded and left the office. As she resumed her duties, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Why would one of India's wealthiest businessmen invite his maid to a prestigious corporate event? What Maya didn't know was that Harsh had made a bet with his business partner, Benjamin Warner, an American investor. Benjamin had criticized Harsh's treatment of his staff, claiming that class distinctions were becoming outdated in the modern world. In response, Harsh had wagered he could prove how out of place someone like Maya would be in their refined social circle. As news of the invitation spread through the mansion, the other servants whispered among themselves. Some warned Maya it was a trap, others envied her opportunity. But Priya, the elderly cook who had worked for the Mehta family for decades, saw something different in the situation. "Be careful, child," Priya advised Maya as they shared tea in the kitchen that evening. "But remember, sometimes life's greatest opportunities come disguised as challenges." Maya spent the next few days in a state of anxiety, wondering how she would manage at such a grand event. She had nothing suitable to wear, no knowledge of high society etiquette, and no idea why she had been invited in the first place. What she didn't realize was that this invitation would set in motion a chain of events that would change not only her life, but also the lives of everyone around her, including the man who sought to humiliate her. The day of the gala approached, and with it, a growing sense of both anticipation and dread. Maya had no way of knowing that this event would become the turning point in her life, or that the very people who planned to mock her would soon find themselves questioning everything they thought they knew about class, worth, and the true meaning of dignity. Maya stood before the mirror in her tiny apartment, her heart racing as she examined her reflection. After days of worry about what to wear, fate had intervened in the form of Indira, a kind-hearted boutique owner who lived in her building. Upon hearing Maya's story, Indira had insisted on lending her a midnight blue silk sari, embroidered with delicate silver threads that caught the light with every movement. "Now remember," Indira had said while helping her drape the elegant garment, "clothes don't make the person, they only enhance what's already there." The Mehta International Gala was being held at the Grand Imperial Hotel, a colonial-era masterpiece that stood as a testament to Mumbai's historic grandeur. As Maya's taxi approached the illuminated entrance, she glimpsed the parade of luxury cars disgorging their wealthy occupants. Women dripped with diamonds, men wore suits that cost more than she earned in a year, and everyone carried themselves with the easy confidence of those born into privilege. Inside, the ballroom took her breath away. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over marble floors, while elaborate flower arrangements perfumed the air. A string quartet played softly in one corner, their music nearly drowned out by the buzz of conversation and tinkling of champagne glasses. Mehta stood with a group of business associates, including Benjamin Warner, the American investor. They watched Maya's entrance with poorly concealed interest. "Ah, there she is," Harsh announced, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "My special guest." Benjamin observed Maya with surprise. Despite Harsh's obvious intention to embarrass her, she carried herself with natural grace. There was something compelling about her presence, a quiet dignity that drew attention not because it demanded it, but because it deserved it. "Tell me, Maya," Harsh called out as she approached their group, his voice carrying just enough to draw attention from surrounding guests. "What do you think of the champagne? Quite different from your usual tea, isn't it?" Before Maya could respond, Benjamin interrupted. "Actually, I'd be interested in hearing your genuine opinion. Do you prefer the Bollinger or the Dom Perignon they're serving tonight?" Maya looked at the glass in her hand, then met Benjamin's eyes with unexpected directness. "With respect, sir, I believe they're serving Krug tonight. The subtle notes of apple and brioche are quite distinctive." A moment of stunned silence followed. Harsh's smirk faltered, while Benjamin's eyebrows rose in surprise. "My father was a sommelier at the Taj Hotel," Maya explained quietly. "Before he passed away, he taught me everything he knew about fine wines and spirits. He believed knowledge should never be limited by one's circumstances." The nearby guests, who had been listening in with barely concealed amusement, now regarded Maya with newfound interest. Benjamin's face broke into a genuine smile, while Harsh struggled to maintain his composure. As the evening progressed, Maya found herself drawn into various conversations. She spoke of art with a gallery owner who was impressed by her knowledge of classical Indian paintings, discussed literature with a university professor who was delighted by her insights into Tagore's poetry, and even shared her thoughts on sustainable architecture with an urban planning executive. What none of them knew was that Maya had spent years learning from the books in the Mehta family library during her lunch breaks. While dusting and cleaning, she had absorbed the conversations of countless distinguished guests, building a repository of knowledge that now served her well. Benjamin watched her from across the room, increasingly intrigued. Here was someone who had clearly cultivated her mind, despite limited opportunities. He found himself drawn to her authentic interactions with guests, so different from the artificial pleasantries he was accustomed to at such events. Harsh, meanwhile, grew increasingly agitated as his plan backfired. Instead of embarrassing herself, Maya was becoming the unexpected star of the evening. He decided to make one final attempt to put her in her place. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, clinking his glass to gather attention, "and since my special guest has proven so entertaining, perhaps she would favor us with a classical dance performance. After all proper Indian women learn classical dance, don't they?" The request was clearly meant to embarrass. Few of the wealthy guests had actually studied classical dance despite their privileged upbringing, but Maya's face remained serene. "Actually, sir," she replied, her voice clear and steady, "I would be honored. My mother was a Bharatanatyam dancer before she married my father. She taught dance to support our family after his death." The crowd parted as Maya moved to the center of the room. The string quartet, after a quick consultation, began playing a suitable melody. What followed left the audience spellbound. Maya's dance was not just technically perfect, it told a story of devotion, loss, and perseverance. Her expressions conveyed depths of emotion that touched even the most cynical observers. When she finished, the silence was absolute before erupting into genuine applause. Benjamin was the first to approach her. "That was extraordinary," he said softly, offering her a glass of water. "Though I suspect you're full of surprises. Life teaches us many things, Mr. Warner," she replied, "but if we're willing to learn." As the evening drew to a close, it was clear that Harsh's attempt to humiliate Maya had transformed into something entirely unexpected. The wealthy guests who had come prepared to look down on her were instead asking for her contact information, expressing interest in her knowledge of art, wine, and dance. But more significantly, Benjamin Warner had seen something that changed his entire perspective. In Maya, he recognized not just intelligence and grace, but a spirit that had refused to be limited by circumstances. As he watched her thank the hosts and prepare to leave, he made a decision that would alter both their lives forever. What no one at the gala realized was that this evening was just the beginning. The real story, one that would challenge perceptions, bridge worlds, and prove that true worth transcends all social boundaries, was about to unfold. Maya's journey from the margins of high society to its very heart would force everyone involved to question their preconceptions about class, dignity, and the true nature of sophistication. The morning after the gala, Maya arrived at work as usual, expecting everything to return to normal. But as she entered the Mehta mansion, she could feel the shift in the atmosphere. The other servants looked at her differently, some with admiration, others with envy. Harsh Mehta was nowhere to be seen, having left early for urgent business matters. What Maya didn't expect was to find Benjamin Warner waiting in the garden, apparently admiring the morning blooms. He turned as she approached, a gentle smile warming his features. "I hoped I might find you here," he said, his American accent softening his words. "I wanted to apologize for Harsh's behavior last night. It was unconscionable." Maya adjusted her work apron, feeling oddly self-conscious in her simple cotton sari after last night's glamour. "There's no need for apologies, Mr. Warner, especially not from you. Please, call me Benjamin." He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. "I have a proposition for you. My company is looking to expand its charitable initiatives in India, focusing on education and cultural preservation. After last night, I can't think of anyone better qualified to help guide this project." Maya's heart skipped a beat, but her face remained composed. "And what makes you think I'm qualified, sir? I'm just a maid." Benjamin's eyes met hers with unexpected intensity. "You and I both know that's not true. Your knowledge of art, literature, and culture is remarkable. More importantly, you understand both worlds, the privilege and the struggle. That's exactly what we need." Before Maya could respond, they were interrupted by the sharp click of heels on marble. Isabella Warner, Benjamin's wife, appeared in the garden doorway. She was everything Maya wasn't, tall, blonde, and dripping with sophisticated Western elegance. "Darling, there you are," Isabella called out, her voice carrying a note of carefully controlled displeasure. "I've been looking everywhere for you." Her eyes slid over Maya as if she were part of the furniture. "Isabella, perfect timing. This is Maya, the remarkable woman I was telling you about from last night's gala." Benjamin's enthusiasm seemed to bounce off his wife's cold demeanor. "Charming," Isabella replied, her tone suggesting anything but, "Ben, we're late for brunch with the Mehtas. We really must go." After they left, Maya continued her duties, her mind spinning with possibilities and doubts, but her contemplation was interrupted by a commotion in the main hall. Harsh had returned, and he was furious. "Where is she?" His voice boomed through the mansion. Maya emerged from the kitchen to find him red-faced and agitated. "You! How dare you make a fool of me at my own event?" But before he could continue his tirade, another voice cut through the tension. "I wouldn't finish that sentence if I were you. Harsh." It was Thomas Chen, one of the senior board members of Mehta International, who had apparently arrived for an unscheduled visit. "Your little attempt at humiliation has already reached the board's ears," Thomas continued, his voice quiet but carrying authority. "Along with some other interesting information about company finances that we'll be discussing very soon." The color drained from Harsh's face. Maya stood frozen, sensing she was witnessing something significant, but not fully understanding its implications. Later that day, as Maya was tending to the indoor plants, she overheard a heated conversation between Harsh and Isabella in his study. "This is your fault," Isabella hissed. "If you hadn't tried to show off with your little game, Benjamin would never have noticed her. Do you have any idea how this looks? My husband suddenly fascinated by some maid." "Watch your tone," Harsh replied. "You're not exactly in a position to make accusations, considering our arrangement." Maya moved away quickly, her heart pounding. She had stumbled upon something she wasn't meant to hear, something that suggested deeper complications than she had imagined. That evening, as Maya prepared to leave work, she found an envelope in her locker. Inside was a formal job offer from Warner International, with a salary that made her eyes widen. Along with it was a handwritten note from Benjamin. "Your father taught you about wine. Your mother taught you to dance. Now let me offer you the chance to teach others. The position is yours if you want it. No strings attached." But as Maya stared at the letter, she wondered if anything in life truly came without strings. The events at the gala had set something in motion, something that seemed to involve not just her future, but the fates of the Mehtas and the Warners as well. As she walked home through the bustling Mumbai streets, Maya felt the weight of the envelope in her bag. The choice she would make wouldn't just affect her, it would ripple through the lives of everyone involved, exposing secrets, challenging relationships, and perhaps even threatening the empire harsh Mehta had built. What Maya didn't know was that her decision would also uncover a web of deception that had been carefully woven long before she entered the picture. The simple story of a maid at a gala was about to transform into something far more complex, a tale of ambition, betrayal, and the unexpected ways that truth finds its way to the surface. In her modest apartment that night, Maya sat at her small table, the job offer before her. While the sounds of Mumbai's nightlife drifted through her window, her father's words came back to her. "Knowledge is never wasted, but wisdom knows when to use it." She reached for a pen, not yet knowing that her next decision would set in motion events that would shake the foundations of two families and challenge everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and the true price of dreams. Maya's acceptance of Benjamin's job offer sent ripples through both the Mehta mansion and Warner International. Her first day at her new position arrived with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The corporate office was a world away from the domestic duties she was accustomed to, yet she carried herself with the same quiet dignity that had captured attention at the gala. Benjamin had given her a spacious office overlooking the Mumbai skyline, a stark contrast to the servants' quarters she had occupied for so long. As she settled into her new role, coordinating cultural preservation projects and educational initiatives, Maya discovered she had a natural talent for bridging the gap between corporate ambitions and community needs. However, not everyone was pleased with her rapid rise. Isabella Warner made frequent appearances at the office, always impeccably dressed and wearing a smile that never reached her eyes. She would often interrupt Maya's meetings with Benjamin, claiming urgent matters that required his immediate attention. One evening, as Maya was working late, she found a file that had been misplaced on her desk. Inside were documents that made her blood run cold, detailed records of suspicious transactions between Mehta International and a series of shell companies. What caught her eye was a familiar name. Isabella Warner appeared as a signatory on several of these transactions, along with harsh Mehta. Before she could process this information, she heard voices approaching her office. Quickly, she slipped the file into her drawer just as Isabella and Harsh entered, engaged in an intense discussion. "Everything is falling apart," Isabella was saying, her composed facade cracking. "Benjamin is spending more time here than in New York, and the board is asking questions about those transfers." "Keep your voice down," Harsh hissed, then stopped abruptly upon seeing Maya. His face darkened. "What are you doing here so late?" "Just finishing some reports, sir," Maya replied calmly, though her heart was racing. "The Cultural Center project requires careful attention to detail." Isabella's eyes narrowed. "How dedicated you are. Tell me, does my husband often keep you working after hours?" The implication in her tone was clear, but Maya refused to be baited. "Mr. Warner has been a professional and supportive employer. Nothing more." After they left, Maya sat in her office, her mind working overtime. The file she'd discovered, combined with the conversation she'd overheard, suggested something far more sinister than simple corporate rivalry or marital jealousy. The next day, Benjamin called Maya into his office. She found him standing by the window, his usual confidence replaced by obvious concern. "Maya, I need your help with something," he began, running a hand through his hair. "There are discrepancies in our Mumbai operations that I can't explain. Large sums of money moving through cultural preservation projects that don't seem to exist." Maya's throat tightened. Should she tell him about the file, about his wife's involvement? Before she could decide, Benjamin's phone rang, the color drained from his face as he listened. "There's been an accident," he said after hanging up. Harsh Mehta has been taken to the hospital. They're saying he fell down the stairs at his mansion. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. She remembered something else from the file, a life insurance policy worth millions, with Isabella Warner listed as a beneficiary alongside Harsh's family. At the hospital, they found Isabella already there, her perfect composure slightly frayed. She was speaking quietly with a doctor, but stopped abruptly when she saw them approach. "Ben, darling, you didn't need to come," she said, her voice honey-sweet. "It's just a small accident, nothing to worry about." But Maya noticed something odd. Isabella's expensive designer heel was scuffed and broken, something the fastidious woman would never normally allow. And there was a small tear in her silk blouse, hastily concealed by her jacket. As the day progressed, more details emerged. Harsh had been found unconscious at the bottom of the main staircase in his mansion. The security cameras in that section had mysteriously malfunctioned during the time of the incident. The police were calling it an accident, but Maya couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. That evening, as Maya prepared to leave the office, she found Benjamin waiting by her car in the parking garage. His face was troubled, and he seemed to have aged years in a single day. "Maya, I need to tell you something," he began, his voice low and urgent. "I've discovered some troubling information about the company's finances, and I think—" He paused, looking around nervously. "I think Isabella might be involved." Maya's heart raced. Should she reveal what she knew? Before she could decide, a figure stepped out from behind a pillar, Isabella herself, her face a mask of cold fury. Well, Isabella said, her voice dripping with venom. "Isn't this cozy? The billionaire and the maid sharing secrets in the dark." But there was something in Isabella's hand that made Maya's blood freeze. The same file she had discovered earlier, the one detailing the suspicious transactions. The true story was about to unravel, and Maya realized she was standing at the center of a storm that had been brewing long before she entered their lives. What happened next would change everything. The carefully constructed facades would crumble, revealing the true nature of those who hid behind wealth and power. The simple maid who had dared to rise above her station was about to become the key to unraveling a conspiracy that threatened to destroy two of Mumbai's most powerful families. The parking garage felt suddenly claustrophobic as Maya stood between Benjamin and Isabella, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Isabella waved the file like a weapon, her perfectly manicured nails glinting in the fluorescent light. "Did you really think you could keep this hidden forever?" Isabella's voice echoed off the concrete walls. A maid playing detective. How quaint. Benjamin stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of Maya. "What are you talking about, Isabella? What's in that file?" "Why don't you ask your precious new project?" Isabella sneered. "She's been quite busy going through confidential documents, though I suppose that's what servants do best, stick their noses where they don't belong." Maya straightened her spine, finding strength in the truth. "Those documents show illegal transactions between Mehta International and shell companies. Your signature is all over them, Mrs. Warner, along with Mr. Mehta's." Benjamin's head snapped toward his wife. "Isabella, what is she talking about?" Before Isabella could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the garage. Thomas Chen emerged from the shadows, accompanied by two police officers. "She's talking about fraud, money laundering, and now attempted murder," Thomas said gravely. "We've been building this case for months. Maya's discovery of those documents was unexpected, but it helped confirm our suspicions." Isabella's composure cracked. "You don't understand. Harsh was going to ruin everything. He was threatening to expose our relationship, to tell Benjamin about us. He wanted more money, always more." The truth spilled out like poison. Isabella and Harsh had been involved in an affair, using the cultural preservation projects as a cover for moving illegal funds. When Harsh had wanted to end it, threatening to expose everything, Isabella had confronted him at the mansion. "Say it wasn't supposed to end like this," Isabella whispered, her designer heels clicking against the concrete as she backed away. "He just needed to be scared, to back off. I didn't mean to push him so hard." As the police moved to arrest Isabella, Maya felt Benjamin's hand brush against hers, a gesture of silent support. The touch sent an electric current through her, but she quickly pulled away. Now wasn't the time. The next few days passed in a blur of police statements and media speculation. Harsh remained in critical condition at the hospital, unable to provide his version of events. The investigation uncovered years of financial manipulation, with Isabella and Harsh at the center of an elaborate scheme. Maya continued her work at Warner International, throwing herself into the legitimate cultural preservation projects she had started. Benjamin, despite the personal turmoil he was going through, remained supportive and present. One evening, as Mumbai's lights twinkled below her office window, Maya heard a soft knock. Benjamin stood in the doorway, looking tired but determined. "I owe you an apology," he said, stepping into the room. "I brought you into this company because I saw something special in you, but I never imagined you'd end up in the middle of such danger." Maya shook her head. "So you don't owe me anything. I made my own choices." "Yes, you did. Choices that showed more integrity and courage than those born to privilege." He moved closer, his voice softening. "You know, that night at the gala, when you danced, I saw something rare. Someone who understood that true grace comes from character, not circumstances." The air between them crackled with unspoken emotions, but Maya took a step back. "Mr. Warner, Benjamin, you're still married, even if Isabella is facing charges. And I'm still just a former maid who got lucky." "No," he said firmly. "You're someone who worked hard, educated herself, and refused to compromise her principles. That's not luck, that's character." Their conversation was interrupted by urgent news. Harsh had regained consciousness and was asking to speak with Maya. At the hospital, they found him propped up in bed, looking diminished but alert. "I understand I owe you some thanks," he said, his voice weak but clear. "Though I never imagined my attempt to humiliate you would end up saving my life." Maya sat beside his bed, remembering the man who had looked down on her for so long. "Why did you invite me to the gala that night?" "The real reason." Harsh's eyes filled with unexpected tears. "It's because you reminded me of someone. My mother. She was a maid too before my father fell in love with her and married her. I spent so many years trying to erase that part of my history, proving I belonged in high society. When I saw you, with your quiet dignity, it made me ashamed of what I'd become." The revelation stunned Maya into silence. The man who had tried to humiliate her had been fighting his own demons, his own shame about his humble origins. As she left the hospital room, Maya found Benjamin waiting. He held out a newspaper. The headlines screamed about Isabella's arrest, the financial scandal, and the attempted murder charges. Their world had been turned upside down, and yet something new was trying to take root in the ruins of the old. But Maya knew that anything between them would have to wait. There were wounds that needed healing, truths that needed to be faced, and most importantly, a legacy of good work that needed to be protected and continued. What she didn't realize was that fate had one more surprise in store, one that would challenge everything she thought she knew about love, forgiveness, and the true meaning of belonging. In the wake of the scandal, Warner International faced intense scrutiny. Maya found herself working longer hours than ever, helping Benjamin salvage the legitimate charitable projects from the taint of Isabella's schemes. The cultural preservation initiatives she had started were now more important than ever. They represented hope for redemption, a chance to do real good. Priya, the elderly cook from the Mehta mansion, visited Maya at her new office one afternoon, bringing with her the comforting scent of cardamom tea and wisdom earned through years of observing the wealthy from the shadows. "You've changed this place," Priya said, looking around the office with pride. "But be careful not to lose yourself in their world entirely." Maya understood the warning. She had seen how wealth and power could corrupt, how it had twisted Isabella and Harsh until they barely recognized their own reflections. Yet she also saw how it could be used for good, through Benjamin's genuine desire to make a difference. As Harsh recovered in the hospital, he began sharing stories about his mother, the maid who had captured his father's heart. Each revelation painted a picture of a woman much like Maya, someone who had maintained her dignity despite society's prejudices. These conversations slowly transformed their relationship from one of employer and servant to something more complex, tinged with understanding and a shared recognition of life's strange ironies. "My mother would have liked you," Harsh admitted during one such conversation. She always said that true class couldn't be bought or learned in finishing schools. It came from how you treated others. Meanwhile, Benjamin was dealing with his own struggles. The divorce proceedings with Isabella had turned ugly, with tabloids speculating wildly about his relationship with Maya. Though nothing inappropriate had happened between them, the gossip threatened to undermine both their reputations and the charitable work they were trying to accomplish. One evening, after a particularly difficult board meeting, Benjamin found Maya in the office garden, a space she had created as a small reminder of her days tending the Mehta mansion's grounds. "The board wants me to distance myself from the cultural projects, he said, watching her arrange a vase of fresh jasmine. "They think having you as the face of our charitable works looks suspicious, given the circumstances." Maya's hands stilled on the flowers. "Perhaps they're right. Everything I touch seems to become complicated." "No," Benjamin said firmly. "You're the only uncomplicated thing in my life right now. Everyone else is playing angles, looking for advantages. You just want to do what's right." Their eyes met, and for a moment the air was charged with unspoken possibilities, but Maya gently turned away, focusing on the flowers again. "We need to be careful," she said softly. "Your divorce isn't final, and people are watching. The projects are more important than any personal feelings." What neither of them knew was that Isabella, despite being under house arrest pending trial, had one final card to play. She had discovered something in her investigation of Maya's past, a secret that could change everything. The revelation came in the form of a letter delivered to Maya's apartment. Inside was a photograph she had never seen before, showing her father in his sommelier uniform standing next to a much younger, harsh Mehta. The accompanying note from Isabella was brief but devastating. "Did you ever wonder why Harsh really invited you to that gala? Ask him about the debt he owed your father." Maya's world tilted on its axis, her hands trembling. She drove to the hospital, needing answers. She found Harsh awake, staring out the window at the Mumbai skyline. "You knew my father," she said without preamble, showing him the photograph. "All this time, you knew." Harsh's face aged years in moments. "Yes," he admitted. "Your father saved my life once some years ago when I was young and reckless. I had too much to drink at an event where he was working. I was about to drive home, but he stopped me, took my keys, called me a cab. The next day I learned there had been a terrible accident on the route I would have taken. Why didn't you tell me? I kept track of him over the years, watched his career. When he passed away, I wanted to help his family, but my pride, my shame about my own background, I convinced myself it wasn't my place. When I saw you working in my house, I recognized you immediately. You have his eyes." Maya sank into the chair beside his bed, overwhelmed. "I asked the gala invitation. Was my coward's way of trying to repay a debt. I thought if I could prove you didn't belong in that world, I could justify all the years I ignored my conscience. Instead, you proved that you belonged there more than any of us." The truth hung between them, heavy with years of missed connections and wasted opportunities. But before Maya could fully process this revelation, her phone buzzed with an urgent message from Benjamin. The message was brief but alarming. "Isabella's escaped house arrest. She's made threats. Come to the office immediately. We need to talk." Maya looked at Harsh, seeing the concern in his eyes. "Go," he said softly. "But remember, whatever happens next, you have nothing to prove to anyone anymore." As Maya drove through Mumbai's crowded streets toward Warner International, she realized that all the threads of her life were about to converge. The past and present, love and duty, truth and deception. Everything was rushing toward a moment of reckoning that would define not just her future, but the legacy of two powerful families and the man she had grown to love. What she couldn't know was that Isabella's escape was just the beginning. The final act of this story would require every ounce of grace, courage, and wisdom that Maya had learned through her remarkable journey from servant to savior. The Warner International building stood silhouetted against the setting sun as Maya pulled into the parking garage. Her heart pounded with each step toward the elevator, remembering the last confrontation that had taken place here. The offices were eerily quiet, most employees having left for the day. She found Benjamin in the cultural center she had helped create, standing among displays of traditional Indian artworks and photographs of community projects. His face was drawn with worry. "Isabella left a message," he said without preamble. "She claims to have evidence that would destroy both our reputations and the company's charitable works. She wants to meet." Before Maya could respond, a familiar voice cut through the air. "Evidence is such an ugly word. I prefer to think of it as leverage." Isabella stepped out from behind a display, looking remarkably composed for someone who had just escaped house arrest, but there was a wild edge to her elegance now, a desperation in her eyes that made her more dangerous than ever. "Did you really think I wouldn't investigate you thoroughly?" Isabella asked Maya, her voice dripping with disdain. "A maid who knows wine, dance, and literature, who just happens to have a connection to harsh Mehta. It was too perfect." "What do you want, Isabella?" Benjamin demanded, moving protectively toward Maya. "Want? I want my life back, the one she stole with her perfect little act of humble dignity." Isabella pulled out a folder. "I have proof here that you two were working together all along, that this whole thing was a setup to trap Harsh and me. Once the press sees these carefully edited photos and documents, your precious cultural projects will be seen as nothing but a front for corporate espionage." Maya felt a calm clarity descend over her. "You're right about one thing," she said quietly. "Nothing about this was coincidence, but not in the way you think." She pulled out her phone and played a recording, Isabella's own voice from the parking garage, confessing to pushing Harsh down the stairs. "The police have had this since that night. I was wearing a wire because Thomas Chen suspected you might try something. We just needed you to incriminate yourself." Isabella's composure cracked. "You little—" She lunged forward, but Benjamin caught her arm. "It's over, Isabella," he said firmly. "The police are already on their way." "You don't understand," Isabella said, her voice breaking. "I did it all for you, Benjamin. Harsh was threatening to expose our relationship, to ruin everything we built. I couldn't let that happen." "What we built was based on lies," Benjamin replied sadly. "I was so focused on expanding the business that I didn't see what was happening right in front of me. But Maya showed me there's another way to have success, one based on integrity and genuine desire to help others." The sound of approaching sirens filled the air. Isabella looked wildly around, like a trapped animal. In desperation, she reached into her bag, pulling out a small revolver. "If I'm going down, I'm taking you both with me," she threatened, her hand shaking. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. As Isabella raised the gun, Maya saw movement from the doorway. Harsh Mehta, still weak but standing, appeared with Thomas Chen and several police officers. "That's enough, Isabella," Harsh said quietly. "Don't add more charges to your sentence." Isabella's hand wavered. You're supposed to be in the hospital." "I checked myself out when Thomas told me you had escaped. I owed it to Maya's father to be here, to finally do the right thing." The mention of Maya's father seemed to deflate Isabella completely. The gun lowered, and the police moved in swiftly to arrest her. As Isabella was led away, Maya felt Benjamin's hand slip into hers. This time, she didn't pull away. Later that evening, they all gathered in Harsh's hospital room. Maya, Benjamin, Harsh, and Thomas. The police had found Isabella's evidence file, full of manipulated photos and forged documents that would never have stood up to scrutiny. "What happens now?" Maya asked, looking around at these people who had become such an unexpected part of her life. "Now," Harsh said, "we honor your father's legacy properly." He pressed a button, and a nurse brought in a bottle of wine, the same vintage her father had saved him from drinking that fateful night. "To new beginnings, and to those who show us a better way." Benjamin squeezed Maya's hand. "The board has agreed to expand our cultural preservation projects. They want you to lead the entire division." "And I," Harsh added, "would like to establish a foundation in your father's name, to help other talented people who just need a chance to show their worth." Maya looked at the wine being poured, remembering her father's lessons about how every vintage tells a story. Her story had turned out different than she could have ever imagined, but perhaps that was the point. Like a fine wine, character reveals itself over time, through challenges and changes. "To my father," she said, raising her glass. Who taught me that true nobility isn't about what you own, but what you give to others? As they toasted, Maya caught Benjamin's eye. There would be time now. Time to explore their feelings properly. To build something real based on mutual respect and understanding. The scandal would fade, but the good they could do together would last. Months later, at the opening of the new cultural center, Maya stood addressing a crowd of community members and corporate leaders. The center would serve as both a museum and an educational facility, preserving traditions while creating opportunities for future generations. In the front row, Benjamin watched with pride. Their relationship had grown slowly, naturally, built on a foundation of shared values and genuine connection. Behind him sat Harsh, fully recovered and humbled by his experiences, now dedicated to using his wealth for positive change. Maya's final words to the crowd echoed the lessons of her journey. Success isn't measured by how high we climb, but by how many we lift up with us. True grace isn't about perfect manners or expensive clothes. It's about treating everyone with dignity, regardless of their position. And real power isn't about control or wealth, but about the ability to make a positive difference in others' lives. As applause filled the room, Maya smiled, remembering the maid who had once been invited to a gala as a joke. That invitation had set in motion events that transformed not just her life, but the lives of everyone involved. It had taught them all that sometimes the most valuable things can't be bought or sold. They can only be earned through integrity, courage, and an open heart. The story that began with an attempt to humiliate had ended with redemption, not just for Maya, but for everyone who had learned to see beyond the surface to the true worth within. In the end, it wasn't about rising above one's station in life. It was about rising to one's highest potential as a human being. Thank you for watching this heart-stirring story. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below telling me what you thought of the story. Also, click on the video appearing on your screen to continue the journey with us. See you in the next story.